This is BBC Two. Now Newsnight with Kirsty Walk.
Nelson Mandela, the father of the South African nation, has died. An hour ago, Jacob Zuma, the president of South Africa, announced his death.
Our beloved Nelson Mandela, the founding president of our democratic nation, has departed. He passed on peacefully.
Nelson Mandela was born in Old Transkei in 1918, almost a century ago. In 1963, he was sentenced to life imprisonment for political offences and spent 18 of his 27 years in prison on Robben Island.
There are many people who feel that it is useless and futile for us to continue talking peace and non-violence against a government whose reply is only savage attacks on an unarmed and defenseless people.
He was released in 1990, and 3 years later, Mandela and President de Klerk were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. In 1994, Mandela voted for the first time in his life and was elected the first president of a democratic South Africa. Good evening. He was surely the most famous man in the world, certainly the most respected. He was called the world's elder statesman. Nelson Mandela, Madiba, his clan name, has died at home at the age of 95, surrounded by his family, including his former wife, Winnie Mandela, his present wife, Graça Machel, and the President of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, made the announcement under an hour ago.
Fellow South Africans, our beloved Nelson Mandela, the founding president of our democratic nation, has departed. He passed on peacefully in the company of his family around 2050 on the 5th of December 2013. He is now resting. He is now at peace. Our nation has lost its greatest son. Our people have lost a father. Although we knew that this day would come, nothing can diminish our sense of a profound and enduring loss. His tireless struggle for freedom earned him the respect of the world.
Jacob Zuma, well, let's speak to Gabriel Gatehouse, who is live in Johannesburg now. Gabriel, first of all, there must be a profound atmosphere of sadness in the country.
Yes, that's right. That statement which you heard, which came just about an hour ago, was preceded by a few hours of quite frenetic activity around former President Mandela's home in the suburb of Johannesburg, known as Houghton. We saw cars arriving, family members, some government vehicles, and then about an hour before the statement, police vans trying to set up a cordon to keep whatever crowds might gather out. I think that certainly told people here that something was up, even though, of course, this announcement has been expected for a very, very long time now. But then, of course, when the announcement came, I think nonetheless for South Africans it will still be a shock. I think the key words there from Jacob Zuma that you heard speaking in Pretoria at Union Buildings were a profound and enduring sense of loss. He said that the nation had lost its greatest son and that our people have lost a father. People here call Mr. Mandela Madiba by his clan name, or Tata, which means father. And I think despite the fact that, of course, he was 95, he had been ill for a very long time. He was taken into hospital in June. That was the third time this year. He spent 3 months there in Pretoria in that hospital getting very intensive treatment. He was then discharged but continued receiving the same level of care at his home. So in a sense, South Africa had been given the opportunity to prepare for his inevitable passing, and yet whenever you spoke to South Africans, there was always that glimmer of hope that he might pull through. The word fighter was always mentioned. Just on Tuesday, 2 days ago, Mr. Mandela's eldest daughter, Makaziwe, said that while she could see that her father was struggling on what she called his deathbed, that he continued to teach the nation lessons and continued to courageously fight on. And if you look at what Jacob Zuma said there in his statement, the key point, he said, in him we saw so much of ourselves. And that is really crucial, because even though Nelson Mandela had retired from public life quite some time ago, he still represented the embodiment, if you like, of South Africa's better nature, everything that they wanted this country to be. Jacob Zuma said, "Let us reaffirm his vision of a society in which no one is exploited or oppressed, and to build a united, non-racial and prosperous South Africa." And I think while in the coming days people will gather to pay tributes to the huge amount that Nelson Mandela did to achieve that in South Africa, they will also be mindful of the way they still have to go to achieve his vision.
Gabriel, please stay with us for a moment, because we want now to go over to America. President Obama has just given his reaction speaking at the White House.
At his trial in 1964, Nelson Mandela closed his statement from the dock saying, "I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." And Nelson Mandela lived for that ideal, and he made it real. He achieved more than could be expected of any man. And today he's gone home. And we've lost one of the most influential, courageous, and profoundly good human beings that any of us will share time with on this earth. He no longer belongs to us. He belongs to the ages. Through his fierce dignity and unbending will to sacrifice his own freedom for the freedom of others, Madiba transformed South Africa and moved all of us. His journey from a prisoner to a president embodied the promise that human beings and countries can change for the better. His commitment to transfer power and reconcile with those who jailed him set an example that all humanity should aspire to.
President Obama, and we'll be bringing you reaction from other world leaders as we get it, but we're going back now to Gabriel. Gabriel, although in 1999, he stood down and handed over to Thabo Mbeki, he was, as you said, very active in society as a huge force for reconciliation, very much a wise man, and indeed took a stand on issues like AIDS and HIV against Thabo Mbeki.
He did. He remained a huge moral authority even after he left politics, and indeed even after he almost disappeared from public life altogether. And that is why I think in part you will see such a huge reaction to his death tonight and in the coming days, because even though he hadn't been seen in public for a very long time, his very existence, the very knowledge of South Africans that Madiba, as they called him, was still alive, and still amongst them, many felt exercised this moral power over them, and it had this power of this vision of a country that could always be better than it is, a country that achieved so much against such terrible odds. Under Nelson Mandela's leadership, the very fact of his continued existence, I think, gave people hope that they could still move forward and further.
Thank you very much indeed, Gabriel. We can be joined now by Benjamin Pogrund. He is a South African former journalist who reported on the anti-apartheid struggle and became close to Nelson Mandela. Benjamin Pogrund, it's a sad time you join us, but thank you for speaking to us tonight. You knew Nelson Mandela as a young man, and you, in fact, I understand, were the person who reported on his decision to take up the armed struggle.
Yes, well, you know, I knew him first about 55 years ago, when I was a young reporter on the Rand Daily Mail specializing in black politics in Johannesburg, and he was an attorney, and I began to see him. And then there was a big demonstration against the pass laws, the document that all blacks had to carry. And a couple of thousand black women were arrested. And there was a mass trial in the basement of the Johannesburg Magistrates Court. And the magistrate closed the court to the press. And Nelson and I discussed it, and I went to the magistrate, because I'd done law, and I said, I'll go to the Supreme Court. You're not allowed to do this. And the courts were opened. And Nelson never forgot this. In the later years, when he was on Robben Island and I was persona non grata with the government because of my writing, he used to write letters to me, and it would take 4, 5, 6 months to get to me, because he didn't address them to me by name, but he'd refer to this episode, and the letter would be passed on from person to person until people worked out who it was.
Do you think when he organised that national workers' strike, the 3-day strike, and then carried on in that vein, that he knew that it was very possible that he would be in prison for a very long time?
Oh, yes. That was, you know, going back to those days, his commitment to freedom, his self-sacrifice. You know, this was a man, I'm still at that stage, we're talking now about the end of the 50s, early 60s. Although he was a leader in the African National Congress, he had a bit of an image as a playboy. He was very handsome, he was well-dressed, this tall, strapping man. He liked the ladies until his second marriage, obviously, and he settled down. And he had a motor car, which was very unusual for blacks. He was a lawyer. You know, only a handful in Johannesburg at that time. But when by the way, I saw him in prison. I was the first non-family person to be allowed to see him as a friend, not as a journalist, in the early 80s. And I had to give the government an undertaking not to write anything about it, which was pretty hard for me, as I was deputy editor of the Rand Daily Mail. But the point I'm making there is the difference between what he was in 1960-61 and what he was 20 years ago was he was a different person. He had matured, he had grown. I'd heard already through the grapevine that he had become the natural leader on Robben Island and in Pollsmoor. It wasn't just the African National Congress, but all the freedom movements, because there were people from all sorts of movements. They all deferred to him. And if there were any problems, they went to him, and he decided what to do.
Thank you very much for joining us this evening, Benjamin Pogrund.